Dr. Eleanor Chen squinted at the anomalous data scrolling across her monitor. For the third night in a row, something was interfering with the Deep Space Survey's systematic catalog of the outer solar system. She took another sip of lukewarm coffee, grimacing at both the taste and the persistent irregularity in her readings. "Hey, Marcus," she called across the dimly lit control room of the Mauna Kea Observatory. "Are you seeing this deviation in Sector 47B again?" Dr. Marcus Okafor, hunched over his own terminal, grunted in affirmation. "Been tracking it for hours. Too consistent to be instrumentation error. Too slow for a comet. Too dark for a typical asteroid." Ellie pushed her chair back, the wheels squeaking against the floor. At 42, she'd spent nearly 2 decades hunting for anomalies in the solar system, cataloging near-Earth objects, studying Kuiper belt formations, and monitoring the vast emptiness beyond. But this was different. The object, whatever it was, didn't behave like anything they'd seen before. "I'm sending the coordinates to Herschel," she said, referring to the European Space Agency's infrared space telescope. "Let's see if we can get thermal imaging." 3 days later, Ellie stared at the conference room screen in disbelief, her heart pounding against her ribs as ESA's preliminary data flashed before 24 of the world's leading astronomers, hastily assembled via secure video conference. "The object is approximately 0.7 Earth masses," said Dr. Yuki Tanaka, ESA's lead astronomer. "It's on a hyperbolic trajectory that will bring it through our solar system over the next 18 months. At closest approach, it will pass between Mars and Jupiter." "A rogue planet," someone whispered. "Yes," Yuki confirmed. "A planet without a star, drifting through interstellar space. And now our visitor." Ellie leaned forward. "What's its composition?" "That's where things get interesting." Yuki's voice tightened. "Initial spectroscopy shows a rocky core with a thin atmosphere. Surface temperature is higher than expected for an object that's been wandering interstellar space without a star. And there's something else." The screen changed to show an enhanced thermal image of the rogue planet. Scattered across one hemisphere were distinct hotspots, too regular, too uniform to be natural formations. "Are those," Marcus began, "artificial structures?" Yuki finished. "We believe so, yes." The room erupted in a chaos of voices, but Ellie couldn't hear them over the roaring in her ears. First contact. Not with living aliens arriving at Earth in sleek spacecraft as science fiction had imagined for a century, but with the archaeological remains of a dead civilization, carried on a wandering world point 3 months later. The world knew. The object, officially designated Interstellar Planetary Body ULPM-1, but quickly dubbed Wanderer by the press, dominated news cycles across the globe. A joint international space initiative was formed with unprecedented speed, bringing together NASA, ESA, Roscosmos, the CNSA, and a dozen private aerospace corporations. The mission was simple in concept, nearly impossible in execution. Send humans to wander before it passed through the solar system, never to return. Ellie walked through the Kennedy Space Center's massive vehicle assembly building, looking up at the gleaming hull of the Prometheus, humanity's answer to this once-in-a-species opportunity. 3 ships were being prepared simultaneously: the Prometheus at Kennedy, the Zhenghe in Wenchang, and the Gagarin in Baikonur. A redundant approach. 3 attempts, 3 chances to reach Wanderer. "We are pushing every limit of propulsion technology," said Colonel David Hayes, mission commander for the Prometheus, falling in a step beside her. "Nuclear thermal engines, gravity assists around Venus and Earth. We will intercept Wanderer near the orbit of Mars, with about 3 weeks of exploration time before we have to begin return trajectory." Ellie nodded, studying the tall, composed military pilot who would lead humanity's first mission to an alien world. Hayes had flown 5 missions to Mars, commanded the Lunar Gateway for 6 months, and had more EVA hours than almost anyone alive. If anyone could pilot a ship to an interstellar interloper, it was him. 3 weeks isn't long, she said. It's what we have got, Hayes replied. We will make it count. At 57, Ellie had long ago accepted that her contributions to science would be earthbound. Yet somehow, here she was, one of 3 exoarchaeologists selected for the Prometheus mission. She would be the oldest human to ever leave Earth orbit, a distinction she hadn't sought, but now carried with a mixture of pride and terror. How's the crew coming together? She asked. 6 pilots and engineers, 3 scientists, including you, and 2 specialists from the military's exobiology containment unit, Hayes said. Best of the best. Training's brutal. We launch in 4 months. 4 months to prepare for humanity's most ambitious space mission. 4 months to ready themselves to explore the ruins of a civilization that had lived and died beyond the stars. The night before launch, Ellie sat alone in her quarters at Kennedy, staring at a video call with her daughter Sophie. You know, Sophie said, her voice thinned through the speaker. When I was little and you were always at the observatory, I used to tell my friends my mom was hunting for aliens. Ellie smiled. I remember. You drew pictures of me with a butterfly net catching little green men. And now you are actually going. Sophie's eyes glistened. 49 million kilometers to study real aliens. Dead aliens. Ellie corrected gently. Archaeological remains. Still, Mom, I'm scared for you, and I'm so damn proud. After the call ended, Ellie opened the small wooden box she'd brought from home. Inside lay a smooth river stone, polished and painted by a 5-year-old Sophie. A smiling sun and the childish scrawl, "For Mom, the Star Lady." She slipped it into her personal effects bag. Humanity's first alien archaeological expedition would carry a painted rock from a Colorado riverbed, a perfect symmetry that felt right somehow. The launch was flawless. 3 months later, deep in transit, the Prometheus hurtled through the void at unprecedented speed. Earth had receded to a pale blue pinprick, while ahead, Wanderer grew daily in their observation ports. Ellie floated in the ship's small lab, securing samples from their test drilling procedures. The artificial gravity only operated in the habitation ring, and after 3 months, the crew moved through the microgravity sections with practiced ease. A doctor. Hiroshi Yamada, the mission's planetary geologist, pushed himself through the hatchway. Ellie, you need to see this. New high-resolution images from the forward array. They made their way to the command module where Hayes and the rest of the crew had already gathered, staring at the main display in silence. Wanderer filled the screen. A dark, rust-colored world with patchy, thin clouds and sprawling surface features that were unmistakably artificial. Great circular formations stretched across thousands of kilometers, connected by straight lines that could only be roads or railways. Massive, geometric structures clustered in what must have been cities. Along one hemisphere ran an enormous straight line, too perfect to be natural, a feature that resembled a planetary-scale accelerator or launch system. My God, whispered Dr. Fatima Al-Zahawi, the mission's astrophysicist. An entire global civilization. Dead for how long? Asked Lieutenant Commander Chen Wei, their pilot. Hiroshi shook his head. Preliminary spectral analysis suggests extensive weathering. Without a detailed surface examination, I can only estimate. Thousands of years at minimum, possibly much longer. A ghost world, Ellie murmured, carrying the echoes of its people through the stars. Hayes cleared his throat. We are tracking perfect for intercept in 15 days. Let's run the landing simulations again. Whatever built those structures is long gone, but we still need to be prepared for anything. As the crew dispersed, Ellie lingered, staring at the screen. Something deep in her chest ached as she imagined a thriving civilization on that world. Beings who had lived, hoped, built, and ultimately perished, their greatest achievement perhaps this inadvertent time capsule, drifting between the stars until chance brought it to humanity's doorstep. The landing module's descent was rougher than the simulations had predicted. Wanderer's thin atmosphere offered little cushioning, and the surface gravity, while only 80% of Earth's still demanded respect. Hayes guided the craft with precision born of thousands of hours in simulators, finally settling them onto a relatively flat plain about 5 kilometers from one of the largest visible structures. Ellie, sealed in her exploration suit, felt sweat beating on her forehead as the module's landing struts compressed with a metallic groan. Through the viewport, the alien landscape stretched before them. Rust-colored soil under a black sky, the distant sun a bright star not much different from how it appeared from Mars. Prometheus, this is excursion team. Hayes radioed to the orbiting mothership. We have touchdown on Wanderer. All systems nominal. The reply took nearly 7 minutes. The delay growing longer as Wanderer continued its journey through the solar system. Excursion team, we confirm your landing. Telemetry looks good. You're clear for EVA at your discretion. Hayes turned to the 4-person landing team. Himself, Ellie, Hiroshi, and Major Sarah Connor from the military's exobiology unit. Final checklist, he said calmly. Remember, we have 7 Earth days on the surface. Let's make them count. Ellie stood on the surface of a world that had formed around another star, breathed through her suit's recyclers, and tried to comprehend the magnitude of the moment. Below her boots was soil that had never felt a human footstep, would never feel another after their mission departed. Control confirms all feeds are transmitting, said Connor, adjusting a sampling kit on her utility belt. Half the Earth is watching this live. The other half will see it when they wake up. The structure before them loomed in the pale light, a vast arch of unknown material, still standing after what might have been millennia. It rose nearly 40 meters high, its surface etched with patterns they couldn't yet decipher. I'm getting strong energy readings, Hiroshi said, studying his handheld analyzer. Residual radiation consistent with advanced fission or fusion technology. Is it safe? Hayes asked sharply. Yes, levels are well below harmful thresholds. Whatever powered their civilization has been decaying for a very long time. They approached the arch cautiously. Up close, the material resembled polished obsidian, but was clearly artificial. Too uniform, too precisely shaped. The engravings revealed themselves as script, millions of characters flowing in lines across the entire structure. A monument, Ellie breathed, or a library. She activated the high-resolution scanner on her forearm, capturing detailed images of the script. The ship's AI would begin analysis immediately, though deciphering an alien language would take far more time than they had. Beyond the arch lay the ruins of what must have been a city, tumbled structures, eroded by time but still recognizable as buildings. The roads followed mathematical precision, radiating from central hubs in perfect patterns. The architecture suggests a communal species, Ellie noted, recording her observations. These structures appear designed for gathering, for shared spaces rather than individual dwellings. For 3 days, they explored the ruins methodically, collecting samples, scanning structures, and mapping the site. They discovered artifacts that suggested a bipedal species somewhat larger than humans, with what appear to be 3 upper limbs based on the tools and control interfaces they found out on the 4th day. They ventured into a partially collapsed structure that Hiroshi's scans indicated might have been shielded or preserved. Using portable excavation equipment, they cleared a narrow passage into what appeared to be a sealed chamber. This material, Connor said, examining the walls, it's different. Some kind of composite we haven't seen elsewhere. The chamber beyond was small, perhaps 5 meters square. Unlike the eroded ruins outside, this room appeared almost pristine, as though sealed against time itself. And in its center sat a single pedestal, upon which rested a polished sphere approximately 1 meter in diameter. No radiation, Hiroshi confirmed. No detectable energy signature at all. Hayes approached cautiously. Connor, your assessment. The exobiology specialist circled the object slowly. It appears inert. Surface composition matches the arch material, some kind of advanced ceramic or metamaterial. I recommend minimal contact, standard xenobiological protocols. Ellie's heart hammered in her chest as she stepped closer. The sphere's surface was covered in the same script they'd seen on the arch, but here, interspersed among the alien writing, were unmistakable mathematical formulas and astronomical diagrams. "It's a message," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "A deliberate time capsule, meant to be found." The sphere proved impossible to open or activate on-site with their equipment. After considerable debate and careful containment procedures, they secured it in the landing module for return to the Prometheus. Their remaining surface days were spent collecting every possible data point, sample, and artifact that might help humanity understand the civilization that had once called Wanderer home. Back aboard the Prometheus, Ellie and the science team worked around the clock to analyze their findings as the ship began its long journey home. The sphere was placed in a quarantine lab, subjected to every non-invasive test they could devise. The script repeats in patterns, Ellie explained during a mission briefing 3 days into their return voyage. "Our AI has identified mathematical constants embedded throughout pi, the fine structure constant, prime number sequences. They are keys to decipherment, deliberately included to help alien readers understand their language." "How long to translate?" Hayes asked. Fatima shook her head. "With our computational resources? Years, probably. But we have already deciphered some basic concepts, enough to understand the sphere's purpose." She brought up a holographic display showing their partial translation. "It's a warning," she said gravely, "and a gift." Over the following weeks, as Earth grew from a distant star to a visible disk, the science team pieced together more of the message. What emerged was a story both tragic and inspiring. The history of a species that had achieved technological wonders, spread across their world, and then faced extinction. They called themselves, the closest approximation in English would be the Shapers, Ellie explained during a ship-wide announcement. Their world, Wanderer, was originally the third planet in its system, much like Earth. She paused, gathering her thoughts. Approximately 12,000 years ago, by our calendar, they detected a stellar instability in their sun. It was aging faster than they predicted, heading toward a premature red giant phase that would eventually engulf their world. They had perhaps 3 generations to find a solution. The crew listened in silence as Ellie continued. They considered evacuation, but their technology hadn't yet mastered practical interstellar travel. Instead, they attempted something astonishing: planetary engineering on an unprecedented scale. The straight-line feature we observed from orbit was part of a massive propulsion system designed to gradually alter their planet's orbit, moving it outward as their sun expanded. "They were trying to save their world," Hiroshi murmured. "Yes, but they miscalculated. The stellar expansion accelerated beyond their models. In desperation, they attempted to slingshot their planet out of the system entirely, using the gravity of a gas giant in their outer system. They succeeded, but at a cost. The maneuver was imperfect, setting Wanderer on its current path through interstellar space." "How did they survive without a sun?" asked Lieutenant Rivera, one of the engineers. "They didn't, not long-term," Ellie said softly. "They used nuclear fusion to maintain habitable conditions for several centuries, but their resources were finite. They knew extinction was inevitable. The last generation decided that their final act would be to preserve their knowledge, hoping that someday, somewhere, another intelligence might find Wanderer and learn from their story." She gestured to a holographic image of the sphere. "This contains their scientific knowledge, their history, their art, the essence of their civilization, and, specifically, detailed information about stellar dynamics and planetary engineering. They wanted whoever found them to learn from both their achievements and their mistakes." Hayes leaned forward. "Are you saying they left instructions on how to move planets?" "Yes," Ellie confirmed. "But more importantly, they left detailed models of stellar evolution that they believe could help other civilizations avoid their fate. Their mathematics regarding stellar dynamics appears to be centuries beyond our own. A heavy silence fell over the command center as the implications sank in. They died so that others might live, Fatima said finally. Their last act was to turn their tragedy into a gift for strangers they would never meet. The Prometheus's return to Earth orbit was met with global celebration. The mission had captured humanity's imagination like nothing since the first moon landing. Now, as the quarantine module containing the alien artifacts descended to the secure facility built specifically for it in Antarctica, the world waited to learn more about the visitors who had passed like ships in the cosmic night. 6 months after their return, Ellie stood at a podium before the United Nations General Assembly. Behind her sat the commanding officers of all 3 expeditions, the Prometheus, the Zhenghe, and the Gagarin, all of which had successfully reached Wanderer and returned with complementary data and artifacts. Representatives of Earth, she began, her voice steady despite her nerves, I come before you today to share what we have learned from the Shapers and what it means for humanity's future. The hall was silent, hundreds of diplomats and billions of viewers worldwide hanging on her words. The knowledge contained within the Shaper archive has been partially deciphered. Their models of stellar physics have already been validated by our own scientists, representing a quantum leap in our understanding of stars. Their engineering principles for megascale projects have applications that extend far beyond their original purpose. She took a deep breath. But perhaps most significantly, their stellar models have allowed us to more accurately predict the life cycle of our own sun. And what we have found is sobering. While our previous estimates gave Earth another billion years of habitability, the Shaper's more advanced models suggest that solar instability will begin much sooner, in approximately 500 million years. A murmur ran through the assembly. 500 million years may seem like an eternity to our species, which has existed for less than 1 million. But the Shaper's history teaches us that planetary-scale solutions require foresight measured in thousands, not hundreds, of years. They began too late. They have given us the chance to begin early. Ellie gestured to the screens behind her, which displayed a complex schematic derived from the Shaper archive. This is the outline of a multi-millennial project to gradually adjust Earth's orbit as the sun's habitable zone shifts. Not next year, not next century, but a vision that extends beyond our lifetimes, our children's lifetimes beyond the span of any civilization Earth has yet produced. A project that would require humanity to think not as nations or even generations, but as caretakers of a world with a future measured in hundreds of millions of years. She paused, letting the magnitude of the proposal sink in. The Shapers have given us both a warning and the tools to heed it. Now, we must decide. Will we learn from their tragedy? Will we reach across time as they did? Not to unknown aliens, but to our own distant descendants? Will we begin a journey measured not in kilometers, but in eons? In the months that followed, the International Planetary Sustainability Initiative was formed. Scientists from every nation began the work of translating the Shaper's knowledge into practical applications, not just for the distant stellar problem, but for immediate challenges like climate stabilization and asteroid defense. The Wanderer Protocols, as they came to be known, established the first practical framework for millennial-scale planning. The initiative opened offices in every major nation, with a mandate extending thousands of years into the future. The longest-term project humanity had ever undertaken 0.5 years after the return of the Prometheus. Ellie stood on a bluff overlooking the Pacific Ocean, watching the sun set in a blaze of orange and gold. Beside her stood Sophie, now working as an engineer on the first prototype technologies inspired by the Shaper archives. The Antarctic facility deciphered another section of the sphere last month, Sophie said. Their artistic achievements, their music, they transmitted sound through crystalline structures, creating harmonies we can't even properly reproduce with our instruments. Ellie smiled. I heard the approximation they released. Beautiful, even through the translation. Mom, Do you ever think about them? The last of them, preparing that time capsule, knowing they would never see who found it. Ellie's mind drifted to the translated passages that had affected her most deeply. The final testament of the Shaper archivists, who had worked even as their world cooled and their species dwindled. They knew the odds were infinitesimal, she said softly. That wanderer might drift forever without encountering another technological civilization. Yet they still tried. Their last message was one of hope, that someone would find their legacy and learn from it, that their end might become another beginning. Sophie nodded. The new solar observation satellite launches next week. It's using their diffraction techniques to map our sun's convection currents with 10 times the resolution of our previous technology. One step at a time, Ellie said. They have given us a 500 million year head start. As darkness fell and the stars emerged, Ellie thought about scales of time she had never considered before Wanderer. Human civilization was less than 10,000 years old. Modern technology, barely 2 centuries. Yet here they stood, planning for spans of time that dwarf humanity's entire existence. The Shapers had failed to save themselves, but in their failure, they had reached across the cosmic void to help a species they would never know. Their world had become their monument, their knowledge their immortality, and humanity, finding itself at a crossroads of cosmic significance, had chosen to look outward and forward, to accept responsibility not just for the present, but for a future so distant it strained comprehension. A shooting star streaked overhead, a momentary flash in the darkening sky. "Did you make a wish?" Sophie asked. Ellie smiled, thinking of that painted rock from a Colorado riverbed that had traveled to an alien world and back, of the Shapers who had faced extinction with dignity and hope, of humanity inheriting their legacy and extending it into a future bright with possibility. "I did," she said. "I wish that somewhere, somehow, they know that someone found them, that their last hope was answered." Sophie slipped her arm through her mother's, and together they watched the stars emerge. The same stars that had shone down on the Shaper's world in its final days, the same stars that would witness whatever humanity would become in the immense span of time that stretched before them. In the secure facility beneath the Antarctic ice, the sphere from Wanderer sat in its climate-controlled chamber, still slowly giving up its secrets. Inside it, encoded in patterns of atoms and molecules, rested the sum total of a civilization. Their science and art, their triumphs and failures, their hopes and dreams. And among the millions of carefully preserved data points was a simple message, one of the first that Earth's linguists had deciphered. In the Shaper's flowing script, rendered into English, it read, "To those who find this record, we were here. We shaped stone and light and the fabric of our world. We gazed into the depths of space and time. We loved, we created, we endured. Though our kind is gone when you read these words, something of us continues through you. Learn from our journey. Look to the stars with caution, but never stop looking up. This is our gift to you, strangers across time. The fruit of our civilization's life, freely given in death. May your light burn longer than ours." The instrument panel monitoring the sphere registered another decoded data packet, another small piece of the Shaper's legacy integrated into humanity's growing knowledge. Outside, across all 7 continents, the work continued. The slow, steady preparation for challenges that would face not the children of today's scientists, but beings hundreds of thousands of generations removed from them. Humanity had found not just an alien civilization, but a purpose that transcended the brief span of individual lives. A torch passed across the gulf between stars, carried forward by hands not yet born. And in that purpose was humanity's finest hour, their response to the universe's most profound challenge. Not conquest, not competition, but the preservation of the flame of consciousness, burning bright against the endless dark.